Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. You've reached Vyatta's latest webinar. Today's session is on networking between private and public clouds, bridging the hybrid cloud. Before we get started, a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar will take about 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes. There'll be time for questions afterwards. If you have any questions, you can click the little hand icon that should appear on the upper right side of your screen, and then type your and I will unmute your phone at the end of the webinar and you can ask your question, or you can go into the chat window and enter a question then, and I will do my best to respond. We have more webinars coming up over the next few weeks. I encourage you to go to www.vyatta.com and sign up for some of our webinars. In particular, on March 28th, we're honored to have Brocade's own David Myers, who's our chief scientist and one of our chief technical officers, who will be giving a very forward-looking webinar at the future of networking. So do sign up for the March 28th webinars. With that, I think we can get started. Hi, I'm Dan Schrader. I'm part of Vyatta, a Brocade company, and I'm here to talk to you about networking between private and public clouds. And as soon as I can get my mouse working, we'll click on to the next slide. There we go. So the rise of the hybrid cloud. You know, there's a spectrum of cloud options that our customers are using. The traditional data center, of course, is a well-known and stable, secure technology. However, it's an expensive technology and in many ways an inefficient technology. Utilization rates in traditional data centers are often below 15%. Many companies have started virtualizing their data centers and gone beyond just starting or virtualizing large amounts of their production environments. This increases efficiency dramatically. It increases utilization rates often to over 50%. It has management cost savings, capital cost, operational cost savings. It's a terrific option for companies looking to have a more efficient compute environment. Other companies are starting to take it to the next step and turn these virtualized data centers into private clouds, where they're actually providing cloud services to their end users as a service and charging back for them. Often the difference between a private cloud and a virtual data center is no more than a chargeback system. But once again, by assigning costs to need, we find significant savings both in management and in costs. And this has many of the same advantages of the virtualized data center. That is, it's more efficient, savings in energy, savings in real estate, savings in utilization rate, and it allows scale out of new development on demand. Finally, we see a lot of organizations starting to take advantage of the public cloud infrastructure, and that's using compute resources from places such as Amazon and Rackspace, which provide capacity on demand and are provided on a global reach with tremendous resources available to it. However, few companies are probably just using one or the other. We have all this choice, and the choice seems to be for many companies to choose all of the above. The key to successful hybrid adaptation is to build an agile infrastructure. And we're going to talk about how you can build this kind of an agile infrastructure using Vyatta's technology, that is using software-based networking technology for agile computing. So hybrid clouds are hot. Few organizations are ever going to be pure data center or pure cloud. They're going to use different technology for different purposes at different times. And there's a vast range in speed and type of cloud adoption. But there is a hybrid probably in most enterprises' future. IDC, I think this is an IDC report, found that 61% of respondents to a recent survey planned on using a hybrid cloud model. Only 13% said they didn't expect to be using a hybrid cloud anytime in the next 5 years. So, why would you want to use a hybrid cloud? What would you use it for? A number of different important use cases. Perhaps the most common one is what is called cloud bursting. And this is the seamless movement of workloads from data center to cloud and back again. However, there are a lot of challenges to address. Challenges in terms of workload migration, the ability to clone application environments on demand. There's data synchronization issues, the ability to maintain real-time synchronized copies of data between multiple sites, something that is particularly difficult if one site goes down. network connectivity, which is the ability to enable the flow of traffic between sites. And then, of course, there's latency, bandwidth, and distance issues. Many companies talk about using vMotion to enable cloud bursting or to move into more geographically appropriate time zones. However, vMotion, which is an ideal technology within the data center, often doesn't work that well at a distance. It does have a round-trip lag of 10 milliseconds, no greater than that, and it won't work any greater than that, and it won't work. So vMotion, which is often the reason cited for using hybrid cloud or for bursting into the cloud, not always is an appropriate or useful technology. Other use cases include what is often called cloud balancing, and that is balancing the workloads between different data centers or between different data centers and clouds. It's routing application requests across applications or workloads that reside in multiple locations. You can think of it as the 21st century of load balancing or of advanced delivery technology. So balanced workloads provide a lot of advantages in terms of balancing what resources are available and providing failover services in case one site goes down. A third use case is what we call cloud federation, which is sort of a specialized use case. It's cloud computing environments of multiple service providers are bridged for the purpose of extending geographic reach, improving SLAs, load balancing traffic, and accommodating spikes in demand. Often cloud bridgings and hybrid clouds are used for disaster recovery. Businesses can leverage a public cloud for high availability and disaster recovery, reducing the capital and operating expenses, maintaining local backup facilities. And finally, and maybe the most important use case is simply one of agility. You don't need to build a new data center every time you need to roll out a new application. It allows you to outsource test and dev environments, again, without investing in a great deal of capital infrastructure. And it allows you to move non-critical applications to the cloud, to free up internal capacity for highly secure or mission-critical applications. There are still, many companies that are leery of moving highly secure mission-critical apps into the cloud. So considerations in cloud bridging. Security. Security is the first consideration in virtually any IT project. And the key thing, of course, to realize is that you need to insist on the same level of security in the cloud as you were getting within your own data center. Let's start with, you still need to take care of the security basics. You can't forget about endpoint security, OS hardening, network security, authentication, authorization, auditing, malware protection. All of these are things that you need to take care of wherever your computing is occurring. You have the added concern, once you start moving to the cloud, of dealing with security of traffic in motion, that is encryption and secure remote access. When you're in a cloud environment, of course, you do have lack of control over the underlying hypervisor or hardware. In fact, you have very little control over what your cloud providers is doing in terms of securing their environment. And a lot of that you need to take on trust. And that means doing your homework ahead of time before you start moving your applications into the cloud. You also need to consider federation of your authentication and authorization infrastructure and of network access control so that as you move into different cloud environments, you have one central place for managing passwords, identity management, and the like. But you're always going to be reliant on your cloud service provider for some level of security, whether it's responding to denial of service attacks or ensuring that there is a failover high availability option in case a data center goes down. So when deciding about how to build your hybrid cloud, one of the first choices you need to think about is, are you going to extend an existing network, or are you going to combine two networks together? Is this going to be a layer 2 infrastructure or a layer 3 infrastructure? Layer 2 approaches is what's been advocated by many vendors, and that's simply extending your broadcast domain from your data center to the cloud, creating one large flat network. And this is probably the ideal infrastructure if you are planning on moving workloads The servers are location independent. As long as it's within the same broadcast domain, it's fairly simple to do. There's not a lot of reassigning and tracking of IP addresses. This is preferred where vMotion or follow-the-sun architectures are required. Sometimes legacy applications, including some Microsoft applications, require all the elements of that application to be within the same broadcast domain. And layer 2 encryption is a fairly simple way of protecting data between locations, and it adds little latency. So layer 2 may seem like an appropriate way of architecting your solution. However, there are dangers of going with large flat networks. The first thing to realize is that the security of all the servers within that flat network is equal to that of the lowest common denominator. If you're thinking about PCI compliance, those compliance regimes are going to say you need to make certain that all of those servers reach PCI compliance, and the larger that that domain is, the harder it's going to be to achieve that compliant level. Troubleshooting and management is difficult the larger your network gets to be. Exactly where are those faulty packets coming from and who's broadcasting them? Where are you running into issues? The larger your network is, the harder it is to troubleshoot. Having large flat networks also risks the problem of split subnets and split clusters. Keeping data in sync. What happens if your data center goes down or your cloud fails, and suddenly you have the dealing of data that is no longer in sync, and syncing it up again can be a tremendously difficult manual issue. As we mentioned, vMotion is often the justification for going to a hybrid cloud architecture. However, vMotion over long distance can lead to inappropriate traffic patterns, and it can lead to suboptimal traffic flows. It also will only work if your latency is less than a certain amount. I believe it was 10 milliseconds for the round-trip traffic. And though often that can be achieved, you can't guarantee it. Finally, layer 2 networks can be a single and difficult to troubleshoot point of failure. And the last thing you need is a single point of failure in designing your architecture. For most environments, that's why we suggest looking at layer 3 rather than layer 2 infrastructures for hybrid cloud environments. So the layer 3 approach extends your multi-tiered networking into the cloud. It allows you to organize networks and to limit the scope of problems. This is most suitable when an entire application or tier of an application can be hosted in one place. You can use routers to apply firewall rules and network access address translation, and you can use zone-based firewalling. Other design considerations include workload distribution. Do you have the capacity to handle what needs to be done? External routing and what protocols you're going to use, load balancing and NAT, firewalling, and of course high availability and disaster avoidance procedures. What also probably should be on the list but isn't is appropriate storage and backup as well. So what's the downside of going through the layer 3 approach? Well, it's a more complex approach. Very simply, address settings for applications moved to the cloud need to be changed to those assigned by the cloud provider. And keeping track of different address settings, especially if you have multiple clouds or if you need to change your cloud provider, can be a difficult manual process. Application movement isn't going to be seamless, including vMotion. And then once new addresses are assigned, applications running internally that interact with those deployed in the cloud need to be updated. Nevertheless, in most applications, this probably are issues that you can overcome and that are less significant than some of the downsides of going through a layer 2 approach. So what does Vyatta do? Vyatta delivers software-based networking for virtual and cloud infrastructures. You can use software-based networking within the public cloud, within private clouds, within your data center. That means that you can have the same router, the same firewall, the same VPN technology, whether you're installing it locally or within Amazon or within Rackspace. One set of configuration, one user interface to get to know, one technology to become familiar with. Vyatta can be used on as a secure virtual cloud gateway router. That is, you can install us within your public cloud or within a private cloud or within a data center and have secure layer 2 or layer 3 IPsec or SSL VPN between the different sites. You can have advanced routing. You can extend communication between virtual private clouds. So using Vyatta in the hybrid cloud, here we see an example of use of Vyatta in the Amazon VPC, and this offers a number of advantages. It offers scalable VPN services where you're no longer dependent on the Amazon secure gateway. It allows you to have a full mesh interconnection of Office to AWS, of users to the AWS VPC, of VPC to VPC, something that you can't achieve with Amazon today. It also allows you to do advanced routing, again with a full mesh technology and high availability architectures, and it allows you to do traffic management. Both IPsec and SSL is available. This is available, you can install the AMI directly from us, or you can go to Amazon Marketplace, which offers you the ability or the advantages of paying for it and using for it only when you're actually using it. And that's particularly advantageous if you're of a test and dev environment and you only need the router firewall functionality at limited times. It can help keep your costs down. It's a pay-as-you-go model that isn't available if you're using hardware-based networking. The case for Amazon, for using Vyatta and Amazon, having multiple networks creates needs for advanced services such as routing between cloud networks, firewall and NAT services, VPN services for network extension or remote administration. Often you do have the need for VPC to VPC connectivity, and you can't do this through Amazon's advanced gateway services. But you can do this if you use Vyatta. And Vyatta provides all of this in a software form factor that's easy to use and allows you to use the same technology whether you're managing the VPN remotely in Amazon or locally within your own environment. Vyatta also provides secure branch connectivity, so you can use Vyatta to replace Amazon's hardware VPN options, whether it's a Cisco or Juniper option. One of the troubles if you're using Amazon or other cloud service providers is once you're relying on their VPN option, you don't have any control over how that VPN is being managed and deployed. Amazon and many of the other cloud service providers set limits on the number of VPN connections with its solution. Often it's a limit of about 10 per gateway, which is fine for a small business, not necessarily appropriate for a larger company with many different branches that are trying to access those cloud resources. And of course, Vyatta is based on common internet standards. It can work with routers and VPNs. It branch with any device that supports standard IP protocols. One of the advantages that we provide is secure VPC to VPC connectivity. You can install us as an instance within your VPC and use Vyatta to provide firewall, NAT, VPN routing between virtual private clouds. Again, very useful for those who are trying to build a more sophisticated architecture within a public cloud environment or a public hybrid cloud environment. We've also recently added the technology called Virtual Tunnel Interface, which more than anything else increases our interoperability with other vendors. So this allows you to the addition of route-based VPN tunnels. Vyatta can be used as a remote office VPN endpoint to connect to Amazon's base AWS VPN gateway service. And again, this increases our ability to interoperate with other such as Juniper-based, route-based VPN technologies. Vyatta provides both Layer 2 and Layer 3 services, so you can connect two networks on the same addressing using the same subnets on both sides. And as we said, that enables vMotion and VLAN stretching where that's appropriate. Vyatta is available as an AMI. It's also available within Amazon's Marketplace. The image exists as an AMI. You can pay by the hour or term-based model. And this gives you a lot of flexibility, as I think we mentioned previously. It also allows you to take Vyatta out for a test drive prior to purchasing. So who is Vyatta? Vyatta is the leader in software-based networking. We're part of the Brocade family of networking solutions. We're used in thousands of production networks. There have been over 1 million downloads of our technology. We're easily the most widely deployed virtual routing technology on the market. And that concludes our presentation today. As I promised, I kept it to just about 20 minutes. So remember when you used to get excited about networking? We think it's that time again. Now that the presentation is over, this would be an excellent time for questions. And let me open up the question panel and see what people have been asking. All right, so I see John is asking for the difference between the open source and the subscription version of Vyatta. Vyatta is an open source company, and we continue to support the open source community. The open source product is very widely used. However, the subscription edition offers a number of additional capabilities, including a graphical user interface, access to the RESTful APIs, which gives you a lot of capability for, let's say, developing, integrating it into your other management orchestration technologies. It offers some additional authentication technologies. Most importantly, the subscription version is backed by a global 24/7 support team. So you have someone to call if something goes wrong. And hopefully nothing's ever going to go wrong, but your network is too important to rely on hoping that you figure out how to handle the problem. The next question is asking how Vyatta is changing with the Brocade. I think it's trying to say the Brocade acquisition. Vyatta is continuing to be managed as a standalone company that's part of the Brocade family. They've provided additional development resources, but they haven't changed, our philosophy or our products. We're going to continue to work on use cases and reference architectures for integrating into the Brocade model, but we're also going to keep developing our software-based routing technology and our commitment to software-based networking. All right, let's see if there are any last questions here. I don't see any questions. You do have the option of raising your hand if you want to ask a question, and you can ask it by phone if you want me to unmute you, or you can type it in. Well, with no more questions, I think it's time to conclude this webinar. Thank you for joining today's webinar on networking between private and public clouds. I'm Dan Schrader from Vyatta. Do come back to Vyatta.com, go into the Learn tab to sign up for additional webinars. We have a very exciting webinar series. I think next week we have a webinar on software-defined networking. And then after that, we have Brocade's own chief scientist, David Meyer, talking about the future of networking. So 2 exciting subjects. Do join us. Thank you for joining me today. And with this, I think we will conclude the webinar. Thank you.